In the 1920s, people in Oklahoma started dying, quietly. No headlines, no investigations that went anywhere, just bodies, one after another. But these weren't random killings. They were planned, systematic, and for years, no one stopped it, until a brand new agency stepped in, one that would later become the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and what they uncovered was far bigger than anyone expected. To understand how this happened, you have to start with the victims, members of the Osage Nation. At the time, they were among the richest people per capita in the world, not because of land anyone wanted, but because of what lay beneath it, oil. When it was discovered under Osage land, everything changed. Wells spread rapidly, and the tribe began generating enormous wealth. Each member held what was called a headright, a legal share of the oil profits. And these shares couldn't be sold. They could only be passed down through inheritance. That detail would prove deadly, because it meant that if someone wanted that wealth, they didn't need to steal it. They just needed the owner to die. At first, the wealth transformed Osage life. Families built large homes, hired drivers, and lived with a level of comfort that was rare at the time. But that prosperity didn't exist in isolation. It was surrounded by a growing population of outsiders, people who saw that wealth and began to resent it. And eventually, some began to scheme around it. The situation became even more dangerous when the US government imposed the system of financial guardianship. Many Osage individuals were assigned white guardians to manage their money. On paper, it was meant to protect them. In reality, it opened the door to exploitation. Now, the Osage were not only wealthy, they were vulnerable. Then the killings began. A woman named Anna Brown disappeared, and her body was later found in a ravine, shot in the back of the head. At first, her death didn't spark much attention, but soon, it wasn't just one case. More people began to die. An Osage man was poisoned. A home was destroyed in an explosion, killing multiple family members. Others fell ill suddenly and never recovered. Individually, each case could be dismissed. Together, they formed a pattern. Entire families were being targeted, relatives dying one after another. And each time someone died, their headrights, their oil wealth, transferred to someone else. Often, that someone else wasn't Osage. This wasn't random violence. It was something far more controlled. A system of murder built around inheritance. At the center of this system was a man named William Hale. He didn't appear to be dangerous. In fact, he was widely respected. Known as the King of the Osage Hills, he presented himself as a friend and benefactor to the Osage people. He donated money, helped neighbors, and maintained an image of generosity. But behind that image was a long-term plan. Hale understood something most others didn't. If you could control who inherited the wealth, you could control everything. To carry out that plan, he worked through people close to him, especially his nephew, Ernest Burkhart. Ernest married an Osage woman named Molly, whose family held valuable headrights. Then, over time, members of her family began to die. Her sister Anna was killed. Another sister died in a bombing. Her mother passed away after a slow, suspicious illness. Each death moved the inheritance closer to Ernest, and behind him to Hale. For the Osage, fear became part of daily life. People were dying, but no one could say exactly who was responsible. Neighbors appeared friendly. Authority figures seemed trustworthy, but the deaths continued, and there was no real justice. Local investigations went nowhere. Evidence disappeared. Witnesses stayed silent, or were silenced. It created a chilling reality. The system that was supposed to protect them wasn't working. But eventually, the scale of the killings became impossible to ignore. This wasn't just a few isolated crimes anymore. It was dozens, possibly more, and it was clear that local authorities couldn't or wouldn't solve it. So the federal government stepped in. At the time, the agency that would later become the FBI was still new, still unproven, and still searching for its identity. This case would change that. Instead of relying on traditional methods, federal investigators took a different approach. They went undercover. Agents entered Osage County posing as ordinary people, cattlemen, oil workers, insurance agents. They blended into the community, gathering information quietly, building trust, and observing what others couldn't see. It was a shift in strategy, more calculated. Slowly, the truth began to surface. Financial records revealed clear motives. Connections between victims became undeniable, and eventually, the conspiracy began to unravel from within. Ernest Burkhart confessed, not everything, but enough. Enough to expose the structure behind the killings, and enough to point directly to Hale. What investigators uncovered was not a series of random crimes, but an organized network. Killers had been hired, explosives had been planted, poison had been administered carefully over time, all of it coordinated, all of it intentional, and all of it driven by one thing: oil wealth. In the end, William Hale and several others were convicted. But even then, the story didn't feel finished. Many of the murders were never fully solved. Some victims never received justice, and the true number of those killed may never be known. But something else had changed. This case proved that a new kind of investigation was possible. One that didn't rely on reputation or local power, but on strategy, infiltration, and evidence. And in doing so, it helped define what the Federal Bureau of Investigation would become. Today, many people know this story through the film Killers of the Flower Moon. But beyond the film, the reality is even more unsettling. Because this wasn't just a story about murder. It was about a system that allowed it to happen, quietly, repeatedly, and for far too long. If you want more stories like this, where history isn't just events, but the decisions behind them, subscribe. Because sometimes, the stories that shape the world the most are the ones that almost stayed hidden.